This video is not meant as an analysis. The content of this video is meant as a showcase of the events that took place in the last 30 days on the territories of the Russian Federation, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and other countries. The region where the most important and delicate military operation since the end of the Second World War is taking place today. Yes, there have been military confrontations since then, but I consider that being placed in the vicinity of 1945, about 20 and 30 years apart, their importance was not as serious as today's events. Why? At the time, mankind was emotionally ready for anything. Just as that generation had experienced the horrors of 7 years of war, they had lived not one atomic detonation but two on civilian population. What else can happen to amaze? Nothing. Vietnam, Korea, Cuba, all historical events in the military geopolitical movement in different areas. Yes, in the early 1990s we had the case of Yugoslavia, but lessons were learned from it. But today is completely different. Why? First of all, today's generations have not experienced the horrors of a large-scale military confrontations in Europe, although they are accustomed to the problems of others, Syria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Israel, etc. No one imagines that a large-scale military confrontation will spread today, a confrontation in which more than two states will be involved. In Europe, we have member states of the European Union, countries appraising to this status. We have NATO, an organization that works proactively in preserving illiterate stability in the European area. Well, let's go back to 2014. The Russian Federation enters Crimea overnight, and after several days of military confrontation, the population there demands the recognition of two newly established republics. We all know what happened next. What is remarkable then is the rather moderate international reaction to the Russian Federation, some economic noise, and that's about it. As for military aid, it's hard to say who and what was done to help Ukraine. Since then, there have been constant military exchanges in the self-proclaimed areas. Europe was beginning to get used to the zonal situation. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation has supported a strong arms program, a strong and sustained program of individual military exercises, but also in collaboration with other countries in the area, showing those who had eyes to see what technique was available. The eyes of the European world were beginning to see, and their ears were hearing more and more often that the Russian Federation wanted to enter Ukraine with the intention of annexing the self-proclaimed territories. Thus, on the morning of 24th of February 2022, what was suspected to happen did happen. Russian military troops crossed the border into Ukraine from several directions. Later, also troops stationed in Belarus entered the territory. How these 9 days have unfolded since then, needless to say, we all know the daily situation. But what I want to debate are the conclusions drawn by several media circles around the world and by international military analysts. So in short, the Russian troops are entering Ukraine. They are advancing, but what can we see? The advancement does not go according to plan, being faced with several logistical problems, alleged lack of fuel, lack of consistency in ground advance, lack of food for the Russian military. So let's have a detailed look at these events. In the first event, several mobile, mechanized and car military units remain stuck in the mud of the Ukraine terrain. Really? We all noticed, especially on the videos on Twitter, that the tanks, the armored personnel carriers, even the Panzer systems have a frame stuck in the mud, but not too deep, being abandoned with ammunition and without being sabotaged. In comparison, no matter how much you search on YouTube or Twitter, you will not find too many videos with Russian tanks stuck in the mud, and if you do find them, you will notice that they were stuck in the mud, but those were removed with the help of others. Wouldn't you know it? During the exercises in Belarus, shortly before the invasion, an online video showed about 20 Russian tanks stuck in the mud, which were taken out of there. What a coincidence. Why? Well, now we see in Ukraine more and more tanks, armored personnel carriers, and anti-aircraft systems fully armed, intact, half stuck in the mud, but abandoned by the Russian military, about which is not known where they were going, which are taken over by the Ukrainians, driving them from the areas where they were found abandoned whether they were on fields or on paved roads or not. If at first we saw videos on Twitter in which they were set on fire by Ukraine, now we see how they are started and taken to locations about which nothing is known. How many tanks are in this situation? Considering that 90% of the Ukrainian military equipment is made in Russia, let's understand that if you find, say, a column of 10 jammed tanks, but with no ammunition, and fully operational, all you have to do is take it from there, mark it with paint, such as the identification code signs, Z, V, circle, etc., we all saw them painted, give them a specific paint to the Ukrainian army, and thus send them back to battle line, but with Ukrainian fighters. Coincidentally or not, we will see, but what is certain is that if at first the technique was sent on fire by Ukrainians, today no more. It is also strange that the Russian fighters did not proceed to sabotage the abandoned military technique, an elementary action in a fighting situation, an action that any novice soldier knows. So it can be thought that it is a deliberate action of the Russian leaders to introduce some fighting technique in the hands of the Ukrainians. But why? Well, maybe for future actions. Well, perhaps because Ukraine does not have a large volume of armor, and Putin's subsequent action would not have the legitimacy of a strong opposition force, at least in terms of image. You can't abandon tens of tanks worth a total of hundreds of millions of euros and not be held accountable, at least for not sabotaging them. The second event, moving the columns to several locations inside Ukraine. They move with sustained speed, but at some point they stop and either move chaotically going in contradictory directions, or they simply go down to a crawl, leaving the impression most of the time that they do not want to reach their destination. Since we watch them on satellite media, Putin knows that the movement of mobile troops is being watched. In reality, it is possible that these mobile units, and do remember the famous column of several tens of kilometers long that have been moving to Kiev for a few days over a poor distance of 40 kilometers. At one point they advance, at the other they stop, so that the public does not know what to believe. What is certain, however, is that the civilian population is rapidly leaving the areas where the column is located, and especially the Kiev area, leaving only the population assimilated to the combatants. Let's think that if Kiev had been attacked only by caliber missiles, it would have had no chance. But no, Putin did not give a sustained order in this regard. In Kiev, having fallen a large number of shells and missiles, but not in the amount in which the capitulation of Kiev was put into question. We'll see. The third event. A few days ago, on the territory of a NATO member country, Romania, a strange plane crash took place in the dock, in the sense that it had never occurred before. And what happened? Well, at a short distance from the border from Ukraine, in the Dobruja area, a MiG-21 Lancer plane crashes without any warning from the pilot. Immediately, according to the procedure, a Puma Socat military rescue helicopter is sent to the place where the plane disappeared from the radar, which as soon as it reached the place of the incident, also crashed. The intervention on the ground, the same night, found the remains of the helicopter. The remains of the MiG plane were only found in the morning. There were no survivors. The wreckage of the helicopter is grouped, and the wreckage of the MiG is scattered over hundreds of square meters. Why? Simply because the helicopter flies at low altitudes at relatively low speeds, and the MiG flies at a high altitude at high speeds. Causes of the crash? Nothing official yet in Romania, only the theory of unfavorable flight conditions. Okay, let's just say the jet plane had some technical issues, it broke down and collapsed, but the debris shouldn't have spread. That is, if it is not hit by the operational anti-aircraft systems in the overflight area, the area in the immediate vicinity of the border with Ukraine to the Black Sea, a few minutes' flight from Snake Island. Odessa is expected to be attacked in the area by several Russian ships stationed. But wouldn't you look at that? Yesterday, on the Ukrainian territory, somewhat close to the area where the incident on the Romanian territory took place, the same incident occurred. What happened? Well, the Ukrainian anti-aircraft plane hit a Russian Sukhoi 25 plane on a military mission, and shortly afterwards the Russian Mi-8 helicopter that came for the search for recovery is hit and crashed. Could that be a coincidence? The case in Romania, a NATO member country, is still being investigated with no official statement. Really? It is clear what happened. Of course, it's not a coincidence. By the way, in Romania, other MiG-21 Lancer planes fell, but in all cases the wreckage was grouped, and many times the pilots managed to eject themselves. But never, in all weather conditions, did they send a helicopter crash. Not once. In the last 10 years, in Romania, a NATO country, 6 MiG-21 planes and 8 military helicopters crashed, but in separate incidents, never together. Strange. Could a Ukrainian anti-aircraft gun have fired on NATO aircraft only as a cover-up challenge blaming the Russians in a desperate attempt to get the NATO military bloc involved in the conflict with Russians? The fourth event. The aid given by the European Union and even by some NATO member countries to Ukraine. In short, a lot of noise, little action. Poland is said to be donating MiG-29 fighter jets. Polish authorities deny it. It is also said that several countries make up an air flotilla to donate to Ukrainian pilots. What kind of planes? Of course, technically outdated. Why? Because Ukrainian pilots do not know how to fly new generation aircraft, and pilots from NATO member countries cannot get involved. So, no concrete results. Metal in the sky, easy to take down by the Russian. More recently, we are talking about thousands of mercenaries coordinated by France. Countless anti-tank systems have been sent as claimed by the UK. But where have they acted so far? They don't really appear in any video. What can we see so far? Well, the Russian army is advancing slowly but steadily. Soon Ukraine will be cut off from the Black Sea, the border with Russia is going deeper and deeper, the junction with Transnistria is made, nuclear power plants are captured, power supply becoming soon problematic. The population actually flees the developed countries such as Germany, Italy, USA, Poland and Romania being conjunctural transit countries due to their geographical location. And regarding the military line, Russia is holding total air and naval supremacy. So let's go back to what I said in the opening. Do you think that Putin has taken into account the option in which to favor a further confrontation of the guerrillas on territory of Ukraine? Maybe so. The idea may have been given to him by the president of Ukraine when he decided to give free rein to an Ukrainian citizen, or when he decided to teach them how to make a Molotov cocktail. Thus, any man can be considered a valuable fighter to Ukraine. This is how the bloc of Ukrainian guerrilla fighters can be created, which will never be controlled. So, there is a better chance that abandoned tanks with ammunition would also fall into the hands of some civilian fighters. Think how many frustrated people who have a military weapon in their hands are in this situation today. Think about how many criminal record holders have firearms on their hands today. So, what do you say? The invasion of Ukraine takes place according to a well-developed plan, adaptable according to the situation developed in the country, or not, as some parties claim. Remember that the Russian Federation has not yet used conventional state-of-the-art military equipment. Maybe Putin is still waiting for a large percentage of the Ukrainian population to leave the areas really affected by the military action. Once again, these are just some of the issues that have been raised. The situation could have developed and been resolved even across several years diplomatically, with sanctions or not. But what do our sanctions help with? With nothing. Innocent people continue to die. It truly is a shame that so many lives had to be lost. Truly shameful for the human race. Please subscribe to the channel.